Hey guys, it's been a while since I posted my last video, and that is because during the last few weeks I've been busy getting used to quite a new setup for me. This one. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably know exactly what setup it is. It's a 5x80 Dragon frame from NN Skates with their newest V.M rocker. And I believe this is their most important frame released so far, and here's why. If you have a look at the history of my skating, you'll see that I started about 2 years ago with a pretty basic 4x80 setup. Then half a year later I switched to 110mm 3 skates. And another half a year later I finally felt confident enough to dive into wizard skating. So I got myself a pair of 4x90 frames from Seba, and I started to learn some basic wizard moves like 3 turns, gazelles, and it was working pretty fine, except that the frames were flat, there was no rocker, so I had to rely on the natural rocker developed just from wearing out the wheels, so it was not particularly user-friendly. And only about 5 months ago I finally got myself a proper rockered 4x100 frames. First the ones from K2, and then later the Ronin frames from NN Skates. And from that moment, this kind of setup with big wheels, long frame, has been my favorite all-around setup because it was stable enough to really be safe during free skating. It was easy to roll, but at the same time it was maneuverable enough for those wizard moves, so I really love it. But if we talk specifically about wizard skating, the 4x100 is not really the ultimate setup for that. If you look at this diagram that I took from Shoptask, you'll see that their 4-wheel frames, they come with a natural rocker, and it was designed to imitate the way your wheels wear out naturally while skating. So it was more of a convenience for an average user. Instead, the frames developed specifically for the wizard style, they came later, and they have 5 wheels with this progressive rocker. But till now, this progressive rocker was available only in the original wizard frames in the UFS mount, as designed by Leon Bezin. So if you have a free skate boot with a raised heel, there was no easy way to have that kind of experience with your boot. But now with these frames, you sort of can. I want to mention that Brandon from 30 Plus Rolling, he made an extensive review of the previous edition of this frame with the original V-rocker. And unlike me, he comes more from an aggressive skating background. So if you're interested in how these frames feel from that side, make sure to check out his review as well. I'll put the link in the description. Now, talking about the frame itself, like all other products from NN Skates, it has a great build quality. It really sounds well, has these thick walls, it's very stiff and robust construction. Like the other frames, it has many mounting holes here, so it's compatible with virtually any free skate boot on the market. Now that compatibility required certain compromise in the height of the frame, because, for example, on this FR2 boot that I have, there are plenty of mounting holes here and here. So in principle, no matter how I want to mount my frame, I can always find a pair of holes not aligned with the wheel to have as small clearance as possible. But most of the other boots, they have only one hole just in the center. And that means that for certain positions, to mount the frame, the bolt has to be aligned with the wheel, requiring that extra clearance for the head of the screw. So NN Skates had to leave that extra margin of a few millimeters for this maximum compatibility. To be honest, I don't know how much of a difference it makes. I'm coming from 100mm wheels, so for me these already feel much lower and much more controllable. But generally speaking, of course, the lower you are, the better. So that's a compromise they had to do to be compatible with all the freeskate boots, not just FR. And this is how they compare to my Ronin frames in terms of the height. Keep in mind that on Ronins the wheels are not new, so with brand new wheels the difference would be even bigger. The total length with the wheels is the same between the two setups, but thanks to the smaller wheels on the Dragons, the actual wheelbase is longer here, making it even more stable forward-backward. By the way, if it's not obvious to you how things like the frame length, the wheel size, the rocker affect the feel of your skates, I'm going to make a few technical videos with sort of scientific view on all those parameters of your skates. So if you're interested to know about that, make sure to subscribe to this channel to not miss those videos. Now let's have a look at the rocker of these frames. In the original version with the V-rocker, the wheels were arranged like this, with 3 wheels touching the ground at a time. And the middle wheel was working as a sharp pivot point between the front and the rear part. Instead, in this V.M rocker, they have lowered the second and the fourth wheel slightly, making this transition more gradual, very much like the progressive rocker in the Wizard frames. So combining all those components, the lower height, longer base and the VM rocker, the result was quite impressive. For example, on this Ronin setup, I could do 2, maybe 3 lines in a row, and that's it. Because this wheel is always pretty much touching the ground and it's sort of stopping me. With these ones, in about half an hour I was already doing 4 or 5 lines in a row, just because you are basically on 2 wheels at a time, so there is no friction, so all the momentum you have, it gets translated into the rotation. So I really had to be careful with my moves to not spin too much, otherwise I was getting dizzy. So it changes the way you skate quite a lot, and you have to put much more control with your muscles to not spin too much, otherwise you will fall. But that's not really an issue, because since you are lower, it is also not that difficult to control it actually. You just have to put a bit more concentration and get used to it. Another good thing about this rocker is that it makes it more consistent on different types of floor. For example, with the Ronin setup, I wouldn't dare to make a line on some rough asphalt, because if I'm doing a turn and my skate is not really deep enough on the edge, the wheel would touch the asphalt and I could get stuck in the middle of the rotation. With these ones, thanks to this deeper rocker, it doesn't matter how rough is the asphalt, I'm still just on 2 wheels at a time, so they rotate more or less the same no matter where you are. So if you want to do those kind of moves during free skating on some unpredictable surfaces, this one, as strange as it is, even though it's smaller wheels, but thanks to that rocker, it actually feels easier. Now, talking about free skating, it's not really obvious to me how good this setup is for that. The first limiting factor, of course, is the wheel size. It's 80mm, so it depends a lot on how your city looks like and if you have pavements really flat enough to feel comfortable with that size of wheel. In my case, in Torino, it can be pretty rough, so I feel it much more comfortable riding on 100mm wheels or more. Another limiting factor is the rocker. As I said, it is very maneuverable, so it's great for Wizard, but when you do free skating and you want to jump and land after the jump or drop from some height, or you want to go fast, so at high speed, because of that rocker and being on 2 wheels, it can be quite unstable. I should say that effect goes away pretty quickly. So after about 2 sessions or 3 sessions, it felt already much more stable, and I felt completely comfortable for free skating, also in a skate park. But with the brand new wheels, it is quite unstable. For example, these are the sizes of a brand new wheels after skating them in this frame for about a week. And you can see that the wheels in the center wear out more than the ones on the sides, which is expected because you spend more time on these wheels than the other ones. So with the time, this rocker develops more natural, let's say, becomes less pronounced and much more stable. So I personally actually prefer this less pronounced rocker as it is now, and once it got to that point it feels pretty stable, so it doesn't get... Now I've been skating it for another week and it feels pretty much the same. So I feel really comfortable in a skate park. I can go on ramps, do jumps, and I don't feel any wiggling at all. But if you want to have that extreme maneuverability, then you will have to rotate your wheels in a certain way to swap the wheels to keep that really pronounced rocker. I think I will keep it like that for the meantime. I really like it. So also all these mounting holes on the frame allow you to mount the frame in the different positions. I have it like this, so you can see the middle wheel is pretty much at the center of my skate, and the fourth wheel is right below my heel. I know some people like to have it shifted a bit backward, and I think I also liked it a bit more when it was shifted backward, just from the feeling, so that the pivot point is a bit closer to the heel. But aesthetically I didn't like how it looked. So this part was sticking out more, and the wheel in the front was a bit too close to the toe. So for example, if you would like to do a toe roll or toe heel roll, it was too asymmetric. So in the end I put it back centered, and I like it more like that. Anyway, if you skate it for a while, this rocker wears down in a more natural way and it will feel great anyway. So if you're not going to swap anything, I think this central position is really the best. It looks best, and with time it will feel great as well. Also, having 5 wheels makes it a bit unusual to do stalls, like on a coping or on a ledge. So for example, with this setup, normally if I jump on something, I would lock with this middle point, but here you can't do that because you have a wheel there. But in principle it's not a big issue, so I learned to stall either on this or on this point. It's just a matter of a few tries and you get used to it. And in conclusion, I can say that I'm really happy about this frame. It's a great product by itself, but more important thing about it is that it opens the style of wizard skating to this huge community of skaters that already have this kind of boots with 165mm mount or other kinds. Because when I was starting, it was not really an option. So to start wizard skating, okay, you could use, as I did, the flat frame and spend some time developing the natural rocker in the wheels. But otherwise you could only use the wizard frames, which were pretty expensive and are pretty expensive. And for that you need a UFS boot, which requires certain dedication from you as well, because if you have a boot for wizard setup, most likely you don't want to use it for anything else like free skating or aggressive skating, destroying that boot because of how expensive the whole setup is. Well, now you already most likely have the boot, so you just put this frame, buy some extra wheels, and you're ready to go. So it's really good that NN Skates did this frame, and I'm really excited to see how many new wizard skaters will appear in the world thanks to this frame. In the meantime, I will practice more and try to learn some new tricks on this. So stay tuned. Cheers!